This is You're Probably Right. Entertainment first, everything else is just bonus. Opinions, all ours. Sometimes backed by research, but never the final word. There are always exceptions, so take it with a grain of salt and a slight dusting of chili powder.
How you doing? Welcome back to You're Probably Right podcast. Today, I want to talk to you about something that, honestly, I don't think I've ever heard explained properly, or in the way that I'm going to do it anyway. Now, as a matter of fact, I don't even think I've heard anybody use the language I'm about to use. And don't worry, it's not swear words. This is well thought out. Because I think we've been measuring relationships wrong, or should I say all wrong, if I dare to say it. So why not? It's my podcast, right? You see, we measure chemistry, and hang on, just give me a break. I know sometimes I take a long time to get to where I'm going, and people probably tune out. But if you really want to know, then hopefully you're still here. And if you're not gone, then that means that you're the people I want to talk to. Okay. You see, we measure attraction. We measure communication. We measure compatibility. We measure attachment styles. We measure love languages. We all measure red flags. We measure narcissism. We measure avoidant attachment. We measure anxious attachment. We measure trauma. And, well, we measure everything. I know. Except the one thing I think actually explains why so many people walk away completely devastated, while the other person walks away looking like nothing happened. And the fact that look is what rips the heart out of the first person. Sometimes they don't know why. Sometimes it's not even a marriage and you're wondering, okay, so I was married, for those of you who were married, and then you got into another marriage, you got into another relationship, or maybe it is another marriage, and you figure it wasn't that serious, this wasn't your first love, but why does it hurt 10 times more? I think if you hang out with me, you'll understand. You see, today I want to talk about relationship currency. Not money, although you might have spent it. Not expensive gifts, although you might have given them. Not who paid for dinner, although you might have. I'm talking about emotional currency, because every relationship has an economy where, whether you realize it or not, every relationship has deposits. Every relationship has withdrawals. Every relationship has leverage. Every relationship experiences inflation. Some relationships even end in bankruptcy. And I think that's exactly what happens in so many situationships. Now, before anybody gets upset, this isn't just about situationships. This happens in marriages, friendships, families, business partnerships, even at work. Anywhere one person is investing more than the other. Here's the question. How can two people walk away from the exact same relationship with completely different emotional bank accounts? How can one person say it wasn't that serious while the other person spends 2 years trying to recover? And maybe it was a really short relationship that they're recovering from. How is that possible? I think it's because they weren't using the same currency. One person thought every thoughtful act was building a future. The other person simply acted or accepted it as something nice. Think about it. One person believes every conversation is another brick in the foundation. The other person thinks they're just talking. Yeah, talking. One person believes spending every weekend together means the relationship is actually growing. The other person thinks they're simply enjoying each other's company. One person believes sex means intimacy, doesn't it? The other person believes sex means attraction. Same behavior, same acts, different meanings, same relationship, different economy. And that's where people get hurt, destroyed, heartbroken. Because one person thinks they're making deposits into a shared account. The other person doesn't even know there's an actual account anywhere. And that's the first mistake. You see, we assume that shared experiences automatically create shared expectations. They don't. Not even close. Here's where I think a lot of people get themselves into trouble. So we say things like, there are no strings attached. You ever heard that one before, or have you ever said it? I don't expect anything. I just want you to have it. I just wanted to do something nice. Really? Are we being honest? Were you being honest? Or are we just hoping? Because I think a lot of us confuse hope with honesty because our heart is in it. So therefore, when we're hoping, maybe it's hope against all hope. We tell ourselves there are no expectations, but you're hoping that, meanwhile, deep down inside, we're hoping the other person notices. We're hoping they appreciate us. We're hoping they begin to see our value. We're hoping that every thoughtful thing we do becomes another deposit into what we will eventually become in a relationship, a real relationship. And maybe that's where situationships become dangerous. Not because they're casual, although that could be argued, but because one person thinks they're investing, the other person thinks they're participating. Those aren't the same thing. Imagine walking into a bank every Friday, right? And depositing $500 into what you believe is a joint account. Week after week, month after month. Then one day you ask to withdraw your share. The teller looks at you and says, "I'm sorry. This was never a joint account." Could you imagine how devastating that would feel? That you don't have the power, the access to make a withdrawal from an account that you thought you were jointly adding to. That's exactly what happens emotionally. One person walks away saying, I gave you everything. I gave out of my own need, even when you didn't even know. The other person says, I never asked you to. Neither sentence necessarily has to be dishonest. Although some of us would like to say, yeah, they were. You got to stay objective about this. It's the only way it's going to help. You see, the two are just operating under completely different accounting systems. Now, here's something else I realized. People always ask, what are red flags? It's the wrong question. The better question is, what made me negotiate with my own standards? If you sit with that a little bit, I bet you could come up with a few answers. Let's go forward. Because that's where everything changes. Red flags don't usually disappear. We just repaint them. We glaze over them. We make them pink, not so red. That's the word that I like, I guess. We glaze over them. We glaze over them. They said they weren't ready for a relationship. We glazed over it. They kept talking to an ex. We glazed over it. They disappeared for hours or a few days. What did we do? We glazed over it. They canceled again. We glazed over it. They came home late from work, didn't connect with us, and went to bed, and then we heard from them. We heard from them maybe midday the next day. We glazed over it. They gave us just enough attention to stay emotionally invested. We glazed over everything. And when I say everything, because there could be more, we glazed over everything that we would never normally glaze over. Not because we're stupid. Not because we're weak. Because hope is one of the strongest forces a human being can experience, period. Hope changes how we interpret evidence. Hope changes how we try. You know, have you ever heard of Vince Carter, basketball player, played Toronto first as an NBA player, and then there's Michael Jordan. Most people know Michael Jordan. The two guys pretty evenly matched with athleticism. Some might say Jordan could jump maybe 4 inches higher, who knows? They could do a lot of the same thing. But hope, drive, it changes how you act. It changes the results. Hope in your heart. Hope changes how we interpret evidence. Hope changes how we judge people. Hope changes how we judge ourselves. And that's when I started thinking about desperation. How desperate are you, or how desperate were you? Not in a negative way. So please don't think I'm bashing you in any way. I'm not. We're here and we're figuring something out together. Because I know nobody likes that word. No, you're desperate. No, that's not what we're doing here. This is not what that kind of, I don't do that kind of thing on my podcast. Generally, unless I'm being an idiot at some point, but generally I don't. Nobody likes the word desperation. But let's be honest. Desperation doesn't always look pathetic. Sometimes desperation looks like patience. Sometimes it looks like understanding. Sometimes it looks like compassion. Sometimes it looks like giving somebody another chance, and another, and another, and another, and another. Until one day you wake up and realize you haven't just been making deposits into the relationship. You've been making withdrawals from yourself. Check it. Now, before you start thinking this episode is about blaming the other person, it isn't. Because if all we ever do is blame them, We never learn anything about ourselves. So let's talk about inflation. Not economic inflation, relationship inflation. Everybody knows what inflation does to money. The dollar doesn't disappear, it just buys less. I think the exact same thing happens in relationships. Every time you ignore something that violates your standards, your standards become worth a little less each time. They don't disappear, no. They just lose the purchasing power that they had. You tell yourself, it's only one little thing. Then another, then another, then another, then another. Eventually, you're accepting behaviors that 6 months earlier you would have walked away from in 5 minutes. What changed? Did they change? Maybe. But maybe you did too. Maybe your standards slowly lost value because you kept printing emotional money that wasn't backed by actual reality. Now, I know somebody's going to hear that and think, so you're saying it's my fault, are you? No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying there's a difference between responsibility and blame. You may not be responsible for what somebody or how somebody treated you, right? But you are responsible for what you continued to tolerate once the pattern became clear. That's a hard pill to swallow. Or should I say, that's a big pill to swallow. Because nobody wants to admit that hope can be, well, it can be expensive. Which brings me to something I've been thinking about. The Desperation Tax. I don't think anybody wakes up and says, I'm desperate. Matter of fact, if somebody called you desperate, you'd probably be offended. But desperation isn't always very loud like that. Sometimes desperation is quiet. Sometimes desperation sounds like this. They've just been hurt. They're still healing. They're scared. They've been through a lot. A lot of what? They've been through a lot. Yeah. They're not ready yet. They'll come around. They just need somebody to be patient. Sound familiar? Maybe all of those things are true. Maybe they really have been hurt. Maybe they really aren't ready. Maybe they even told you that, but you kind of glazed over it. But here's the question. How much of your life are you willing to invest waiting for somebody else's readiness? Because every day you wait costs something. Every excuse costs something. Every time you explain away behavior that hurts you that you wouldn't normally stand for, it costs you something. That's the desperation tax. It doesn't empty your bank account all at once. Yeah. It takes little pieces. It taxes your judgment. It taxes your confidence. It taxes your boundaries. It taxes your standards. It taxes your ability to look at the situation objectively. Until one day, You wake up and you realize you've paid far more than the relationship was even worth. Now let's talk about something else. The Teeter-Totter principle. That's right. Remember the teeter-totters you used to use as a kid? Maybe you still do. Think back to when you were a kid. Close your eyes for a second. Not if you're driving, of course. Think about two people getting on a teeter-totter. One sits on one side, one sits on the other. Most people think the heavier person has all the power, right? I don't think that's true, really. I think the person with the most power in the situation is the one who is most willing to jump off. Because if the one person is terrified of the ride ending, the other person is perfectly comfortable jumping off whenever they feel like it. Who really has leverage? You know what I mean? Like really, really, really think about it. You see, the first answer would be, okay, you got one person. Think about a little chubby guy. And then you think about a little skinny little one over here on the other side. And you figure, okay, we know that if the big guy gets on, first he hangs on, probably just puts his hands down. And then the little guy gets on, he sits on, he says, you ready? He says, yeah. And then the big guy sits on and he can just kind of put his weight down a little bit, and pop the other one up and down, up and down, and up and down, right? And if he wants, he can fling the little one up into the air, probably almost shooting him off of the teeter-totter, right? You think, yeah, he has all the power. But then think about it. If the little one that just has maybe 20, 30, 40 pounds of the weight of the big one just gets off, what can the big one do on the other side? Nothing. They're flat on the ground. They can't move. Oh, they had leverage, but not really. They're stuck down there, as well as if the big one decides to put all their weight down while the little one if the big one puts all the weight down and goes all the way to the ground, the little one is high up in the air and can't get off because it's too high to jump off and there's too much weight on the other side to come down. Okay, just think about that for a sec. Now, let me get into this a little bit differently. Just check it out. So, the answer actually is obvious. The person who is least afraid of losing the relationship, the person controlling the balance. Now, before anybody misunderstands me, this isn't about men. This isn't about women. This isn't about avoidant people. This isn't about anxious people. This is about investment. The more emotionally invested you become before commitment is actually established, the more leverage you quietly hand over to the other person. Not because they stole it, although it probably feels that way, because you gave it away. Now here's where I think a lot of us fool ourselves. Yeah, that's right, ourselves. We believe we are earning security with the other person. We weren't. We're not. We're buying possibility. Got a little land in New York I can sell you. We're buying possibility, and there's a difference. You see, security is mutual. Possibility is one-sided. One person says, I'm building a future. The other person says, we'll see. One person is laying bricks. The other person is keeping the exit door unlocked, just in case. Neither one may be trying to deceive the other. They're simply living in different realities. And that's what makes situationships psychologically exhausting. Not because there's, no actual proper label, because there's no shared understanding of what the investment actually means. You know what I think is one of the saddest sentences in dating? I bet you can't guess. Here, come up with one. I'm going to give you 10 seconds. Just joking. The sentence is, I thought we were building something. That's it. I thought we were building something. That obviously alludes to the fact that you weren't. Read that sentence again. I thought we were building something. There's no anger in it. There's no hatred. There's just heartbreak. Because the sentence itself tells you everything. One person believed every conversation, every date, every sacrifice, every gift, every thoughtful act, every moment of intimacy was another brick in a house they were building together. Then one day they discovered they were building alone. That's devastating, very devastating. And here's the hardest truth I've had to actually admit to myself. Sometimes we're not investing because the evidence tells us to. Sometimes we're investing because we desperately need the story to have a Disney or a happy ending. And those aren't the same thing. One is based in reality. The other is simply based on hope. And hope doesn't always float. Hope is beautiful. Hope is also imaginary. Hope can also be just a dream. Hope can be a best case scenario. But hope can also become very expensive when it refuses to listen to evidence and patterns. And maybe that's the lesson. Maybe maturity isn't learning to love less. Maybe maturity is learning when hope has stopped being an investment and started to become actually just a liability. Now let's take this a step further. We've talked about relationship currency. We've talked about relationship inflation. We've talked about desperation tax. We've talked about leverage. Yeah, we've talked about all these things. Imagine it. You may have to go back. Now let's talk about something I think hurts people more than almost anything. Emotional equity. You see, in business, equity is your ownership. It's the part you've earned. The longer you invest, the more ownership you have. The more you contribute, the more equity you build. I think a lot of people unknowingly believe relationship works the same way. They think, I've been patient, I've been loyal, I've been understanding, I've shown up, I've supported you, I've accepted your flaws, your quirks, your shortcomings. I've encouraged you. I've forgiven you. I've invested. Surely that means I've earned something. And that's where people get blindsided, because relationships don't always reward investment. Sometimes they simply receive it. Yeah. Think about that. Receiving isn't the same as reciprocating. Somebody can appreciate your kindness without wanting a future with you. It's just that simple. Somebody can genuinely enjoy your company without wanting to actually build a life with you. Somebody can honestly care about you without loving you the way you love them. Those are painful truths. But they are truths. Here's where I think many of us accidentally create what I call an invisible contract. We never say it out loud. As a matter of fact, if somebody accused us of making a contract, we'd probably deny it. But listen carefully. I've been here for you. I've treated you well. I never lied to you. I've accepted your baggage upon baggage, your carry-on luggage, the stuff you had to stow away. I've stood beside you. I've sacrificed. I've given. I have waited. Hidden underneath all of that is the sentence we almost never admit. So eventually you'll choose me. That's the contract. Not one they signed. One we wrote in our own minds, on our own heart. And because we never actually said it, we assume they understand it. But they don't. They didn't. Now, before somebody gets upset, and I'm sure some are already upset, I'm not saying kindness is manipulation. I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying expectations often grows quietly beside kindness. Not because you're evil or I'm evil in that way. Just simply because you're human. When we invest deeply in someone, it's natural to hope the investment actually is going to lead somewhere. I mean, don't we want every investment to actually lead somewhere? Hope isn't the problem. Confusing hope with entitlement is. Those are different things. Now, here's another question. Why does being good or being a so-called good person sometimes feel totally unfair? Because many of us were taught something growing up, right? Some things. Be honest, be loyal, be faithful, be dependable, treat people well, respect people, love deeply. And somehow we quietly added one more sentence. And that is, and you'll eventually be chosen. It just seems like 1 + 1 = 2, and so on and so on. But who promised that? Life certainly didn't. You've seen things happen to people that didn't add up before, haven't you? You've seen a baby get cancer, or you've seen a nice person get hit by a car, haven't you? Life certainly didn't say it's going to be that way. Being a good person, or should I say a quote unquote good person, makes you admirable, for sure, or admirable. It does not guarantee compatibility. It doesn't guarantee timing will be right. It does not guarantee attraction. And it certainly doesn't guarantee commitment. And that is one of the hardest lessons that adulthood teaches. Now, I want to challenge you with something. Have you ever noticed how many people keep trying to earn what should only be freely given or can only be freely given? That's right, only be freely given. Read that again or listen to that again. They keep trying to earn what can only be freely given. You cannot earn somebody's willingness to commit. You cannot purchase genuine desire. Doesn't that make sense? You cannot purchase genuine desire. It just is. You cannot negotiate attraction. It makes sense, right? You cannot convince someone into emotional readiness through perfect behavior. You can inspire, you can encourage, you can influence, but you cannot manufacture commitment. Now, I know people do, and I know people stay in these robotic relationships for years on end, and their needs are met in various ways. I get that. That's not what you want. I don't think that's what you want. And maybe that's why situationships become so exhausting for some. Because one person believes they're one more thoughtful act away from certainty. One more conversation, one more gift, one more sacrifice, one more weekend, one more chance, one more display of patience. Meanwhile, the other person isn't counting the same score. They're living in an entirely different game. That's why one person feels robbed. You know what I'm saying? And the other person feels confused. One says, "After everything I did." The other says, "I never asked you to." Neither statement cancels the other one out. They simply reveal that two completely different relationships were happening at the same time with the same people. That's what I think situationships really is. And that's why I'm not really for it, honestly, at all. Not two people avoiding labels. Two people assigning completely different meanings to the same exact experience. That's it. Experience or experiences. One person thinks they're writing chapter 1. The other person thinks they're reading a short story. That's why the ending feels so different. One person lost a future. The other person ended an experience. Those are not emotionally equal losses. And maybe that's why so many people walk away asking, how could they move on so quickly? Maybe it's because they were leaving the same relationship they weren't leaving the same relationship you were. Maybe you were building a home while they thought they were just renting a room or in an Airbnb for a weekend. And that is that is a painful realization. Because it means the greatest misunderstanding wasn't necessarily what either person said. It was what each person believed the relationship was actually being. So where does this all end? Relationship bankruptcy. Now, when people hear the word bankruptcy, they think about money. I don't. I think about running out of emotional resources, running out of patience, running out of hope, running out of excuses, running out of energy, running out of things to give because you're already giving from a depleted existence in the first place. Because eventually there comes a day when you sit quietly by yourself and realize something. You gave more than you should have. Not because you're a bad person and not because you're weak or foolish, because somewhere along the way you confused investment with inevitability. You believed enough love would eventually become commitment with that person. Enough patience would eventually become certainty with that person. Enough understanding would eventually become security with that person. And sometimes it does, but sometimes it doesn't. And guess what? That's life. But here's what I've learned. The most expensive thing you'll ever lose in a relationship isn't your money. It isn't gifts. It isn't even your time, although we say that time is our most valuable commodity because we only have a certain amount of time, right? But it's actually yourself. Because while you thought you were making deposits into a relationship, you were making withdrawals from your actual own self-confidence. Withdrawals from your standards, withdrawals from your boundaries, withdrawals from your peace, until one day you looked in the mirror and realized you became someone you barely even recognized. Maybe you even altered a few things. Maybe you started dressing different. And I'm not even talking about superficially. I'm just throwing those in for good measure. Interest, maybe. You weren't weaker. You were poorer. Emotionally poorer. Because every relationship has a cost. The question is, what are you paying with? Now let me come back to something I was thinking about earlier. Well, or saying earlier, actually. The desperation tax. The more desperate we become, the more we're willing to actually glaze over. Remember that? The more we're willing to glaze over. And that's the sentence. The more desperate we become, the more we're willing to glaze over. We glaze over mixed signals when we see them. It's yellow. Let's just go through. we glaze over inconsistency. Oh, they'll show up next time. We glaze over canceled plans. We glaze over disappearing acts. We glaze over conversations with their exes. We glaze over things that 6 months earlier would have made us walk away without a second thought. It's not because you're stupid. Because hope slowly rewrites. Hope slowly I can't even say it now. Rewrites our standards. That's the tax. And taxes don't usually bankrupt people overnight. They slowly reduce what belongs to you until one day you realize you've been paying for something you never actually owned. Now here's the good news. Oh yeah, there's good news. Bankruptcy isn't always the end. Sometimes bankruptcy is rock bottom. You could look at it that way, or you could say sometimes bankruptcy is a new beginning. Well, you've certainly learned a lesson, haven't you? Well, there you go. Because bankruptcy forces you to audit your life, your patterns, your habits, the things you allow. Where did my emotional money go? What was I investing in? Who? Why did I keep investing after the evidence changed and showed me something different? What was I trying to buy? Love? Security? Validation? Certainty? Or was I simply trying to avoid being alone? Those are difficult questions, and you need to try to sit with them. But they are the questions that change your life. Because if you don't answer them, right, you'll simply open another emotional bank account with someone else and make the exact same investments. Here's something else I realized. People often say, I wasted 3 months, or I wasted 3 years. I wasted 5 years. I wasted 10, maybe. Maybe you bought wisdom, expensive wisdom, painful wisdom, wisdom you wish had been cheaper. But wisdom nonetheless. Because the next time somebody tells you they're not ready for a relationship, you'll hear that sentence instead of rewriting it. The next time somebody consistently shows you that you're not their priority, you'll believe the behavior instead of negotiating with it and trying to bend it. The next time somebody asks you to keep investing while they keep postponing commitment and maybe giving it to someone else, you'll recognize the economy you're walking into. Not because you become cynical, because you've become financially literate, emotionally, financially literate. And that's what this episode has really been about all along. Not love, economics, relationship economics. Learning the difference between making a deposit and making a sacrifice. Because when you make a sacrifice, it don't come back unless you're Jesus. Learning the difference between generosity and self-abandonment. Learning the difference between patience and postponing reality. Learning the difference between hope and denial. And maybe, just maybe, the healthiest relationship you'll ever have will begin the day you stop asking, how much more can I invest into someone? Or how much more can I invest to make someone choose me? And start asking, has this relationship earned another investment from me? That's a completely different question. One question gives away your power, and gives you away, in a sense. The other protects it, or protects you. One question chases certainty. The other measures the actual reality of what's going on. One question comes from fear. The other one comes from wisdom. So before you make another emotional deposit, ask yourself something. Is this relationship growing because we're both investing? Or am I simply funding a future that only exists in my imagination? I was going to say something else. I won't say it. Or am I simply funding a future that only exists for someone else in the future with someone else, but has nothing to do with me? Yeah. Because if you're the only one making deposits, you're not building a relationship, you're financing someone else's dream. And dreams can become very expensive. Anyway, as always, this is You're Probably Right. I am MCM. Take care until next time. Hey, come check out You're Probably Right podcast. Society is getting more unpredictable every day, but at the same time, predictable in its unpredictability. Say that 4 times real fast. Come with me as I attempt to find clarity in all the fog while staying way outside the box and kicking the box way down the road with my size 12 ducks. I use the Bible, experience, education, fortune, misfortune, life's lessons, life's mistakes to sort through all the mess. I talk about news, God, God, self-help, sports, sickness, health, music, parenting, love, humbleness, hurt, pain, joy, and all the things that might make you say, I never thought of it that way. Hopefully, anyway. Also, I take a stab at answering tough and not so tough questions, and all the while understand that, listen, sometimes you end up in the hot seat and there's no thermostat. Well, that's how it is here. And because there's no topic, very few topics off the table, Torontonians will understand that Doug Ford reference there. Hopefully the podcast will be helpful and uplifting. And hey, maybe you'll find your own private Idaho here somewhere. Hope to see you soon.